Acknowledging God is present here and now, let us pray. Father, Mother God, we give thanks for this opportunity to be open to the awareness of your presence here, now. We allow this moment to be unfettered by the stuff we brought into it. We allow it to be free of any burden of the consideration of what's going to be in the next moment, or the moment after that, or tomorrow, or the next week. In this moment, we are free. In our opening to prayer to you, we allow ourselves to move closer. To not see you as out there, but to see you as in here, expressing through us, enlivening us, nurturing us, lifting us. And for this opportunity to practice your presence, we give thanks. And so it is that together we say, Amen. What I need when I need it. Do you like that song, by the way? It takes a little bit of practice, but I thought we'd run through it twice to give us that opportunity. Well, we've been talking about, I've been talking about, I don't know whether you've been talking about it or not, but I've been talking about Michael Singer's book, The Surrender Experiment. Michael Singer, as you have heard in the past, was a hippie graduate student in economics. He posed this question to his brother-in-law, who was a stockbroker on Wall Street. Have you ever noticed that inside of you that is observing what you're thinking? Well, this question drove him throughout his career. And a couple of weeks ago, before the rude interruption of Father's Day, I left off in the book with his having written a medical billing package. Well, in this time frame, and this was in the early 80s, in this time frame, he also developed a reputation of being a solid systems programmer. And he picked up an accounting system. He purchased an accounting system through a distributor in Silicon Valley that allowed him to address additional clients to what he was, to what the programs that he had constructed. And in parallel, he was developing this medical billing system, and it had been implemented at one doctor's office. In the meantime, he had noticed that in his installation of this general accounting system that it had some bugs, and there were some problems in the implementation, and so he had contacted his distributor of that software, which was a company called Systems Plus out in Silicon Valley. And his complaint, well, it was just a reporting of the bugs, and that he did that, and several weeks later he got a call back from a customer service person who said, apologies for the bugs, we're working on it, we're getting our developers to correct it. And in that conversation, the customer service representative said, but be patient with us because we're expanding our applications, and we're looking for an application in real estate, and we're looking for an application in legal offices, and we're looking for an application in billing, in medical billing. Now, he had just implemented a few weeks prior his first doctor's office with this piece of software that he had spent 2 years and a number of programmers by that time developing. And while he was hesitant to say anything about this package because, again, first doctor's office was implemented a few weeks prior, he had no idea, how good it was. He said, well, I happen to have a medical billing package. And so the customer service rep said, you do? Oh, well, wait a minute. And it turns out that her boss was just walking by. She mentioned to her boss that here was this fellow in the woods north of Gainesville, Florida, who happened to have a medical billing package. And the boss said, well, tell him to send something in. And so the customer service rep said, put together, or send your manual, send your software, and we'll take a look at it. Several weeks later, he got a call from the president of the company saying, I'd like to meet with you. So he flew from Silicon Valley, from San Jose area, out to Gainesville, traveled up to this campus, which was a few, 10 acres or 20 acres of land, on which the Temple of the Universe was located, and where the small office of 5 programmers was housed. And the president of the company said, we see a lot of applications. We've been looking at a lot of different applications in various industries, and this is one of the best that we've seen. We'd like to represent you in the medical billing market. Well, here was a small programming group. This was back in the early days of the PC. And here a major software distributor from Silicon Valley said they wanted to distribute the software. Think about this. A phone call from a customer service rep. Let me mention it to my boss. The boss calls back, comes down to Gainesville, engages their software, and in September of that year, this is 1982, in September of that year, they informed him that they were going to be making a big splash of medical billing software in their coming Comdex booth in November. How many of you know of Comdex? Comdex is Computer Dealers Exposition. It was one of the major expositions in the PC industry back in the early 80s. Well, as it happens, in 1981, I had joined Otrana Advanced Systems. We went out to Comdex in 1981 with 6 computers. It turns out it was our total output of portable computers. It was the Otrana Advanced Systems portable computer, and it was a Z80 processor, which TRS-80 was at the time. And so we had showed up with 6 machines. We had a small booth, and by the time that 4-day Comdex was over, we had 1 machine left running. I mean, we were really in prototype stage at that point. In 1982, we were loaded for bear. In 1981, the IBM PC was announced, and Compaq came out with their compatible machine. So we developed a compatible Otrana Advanced Systems. And so we went to Comdex 1982, loaded for bear. But we got there, and the 2 pieces of software that we had to demonstrate on that package was WordStar. How many of you remember WordStar? Oh boy, you guys are a bunch of young ones, aren't you? Okay, we have 1 veteran. Okay, and how many of you remember VisiCalc? VisiCalc was a predecessor of Microsoft's Excel. Okay, so we were demonstrating WordStar and VisiCalc on this little portable computer. We thought we were just the cat's meow. This thing was a solid portable machine. The Osborne, which was like a sewing machine, it had similar capabilities, but here we were, 23 pounds in a little package like this. And we had a nice booth. We set it up. And during some slow time in the exhibition, I would walk around and see what else was out there. Well, I came upon the Systems Plus booth, and I saw that they were a software distributor. I saw that every one of their pieces of software, or most of them, were running on TRS-80s. And tell me that I wasn't envious. This was before I got enlightened, so I was envious at the time. But the software packages that were being represented, I didn't pay any attention to the applications. I just saw the broad breadth of them. But medical billing, medical manager was being promoted at that Systems Plus booth in 1982. So Michael Singer and my paths crossed at an early age, and I had no idea. But it turns out that that medical billing package took off. They expanded their operation there on the temple grounds, and they got a call from a county commissioner or a fellow in the planning department. Says, you are out of compliance. Having this office back here in the woods, you need to have a space on which you're occupy space which you are zoned at least light industrial. And so they had no idea what they were going to do, okay? Now pay attention to these anecdotes, and this is just time after time after time after time. Michael Singer experienced this situation where something would be presented to him, and he would either be celebrating or he would be mourning this presentation. And it turns out that when a county commissioner visits your operation and says you need to move or you need to shut down, there's not a whole lot of positive stuff there, right? Well, it turns out that at the same time there was a developer that was developing a plot of land that was just adjacent to the temple grounds. And they were going to have a construction recycling, call it construction refuse dump there. And because it was located back away from because it was located on the highway, but it was just near where several of the residents in that area, they got together and petitioned the county commissioners to not approve that construction refuse site. It was 40 acres. Well, not being approved, it became available for sale. And Michael Singer and the Temple of the Universe bought it, constructed a 14,000 square foot office building in which they had something like 15 programmers at the time. Plenty of space, 1,000 square feet per programmer, right? Well, as the medical billing practice took off, they needed every bit of that 14,000. They built another building, another 14,000. It turns out they ended up with 5 buildings filled with programmers and systems developers north of Gainesville, but it all happened because this situation came up where there was going to be a construction refuse built adjacent to their land, okay? So regardless of the circumstances, Michael Singer was willing to continue his experiment in surrendering to what is. How often do we encounter stuff in our life that is distasteful, unacceptable, and we fight it? Well, in the case of the county refuse or the construction refuse site, he moved his feet. But nonetheless, he was surrendering to this situation. He saw an opportunity, he moved his feet, he made use of the situation, garnered the necessary influencers, and convinced the county commissioners that they should not zone the site. Instead, zone it light industrial. As a result, they were able to present to the universe the facility to be able to expand into this growing PC marketplace. Well, so how does that affect us? Yeah, here was a very intelligent graduate student, economics. He happened upon a plot of land north of Gainesville and was able to buy in at a low cost. Yeah, he was able to start a construction business because of the quality of the buildings that he put up on that land. Yeah, he was able to write a software package for his construction business to manage the business more effectively. Yeah, he was able to build a reputation that allowed him to access some doctor's offices and get contracts to write software for them. Yeah. All of these things fell into place. And we might say, what a lucky fellow. But there were 2 things that he did that allowed his luck. One of them was that he gained a very solid knowledge of self. He was able, through his meditation practice and spiritual discipline. He was able to develop a relationship with his own consciousness that allowed him to, number 2, surrender. He was able to observe that aspect of consciousness that was fighting the conditions and the circumstances and let that go. We can do that. You know, he started off small. He started off practicing on the little stuff. And he was noticing that when he was allowing himself to let go with the little stuff, the big stuff were starting to face towards him, turn in his favor. And we can do the same thing. But there is, in our scripture, we have in Matthew 6, 1 through 8, we have this. Beware of practicing your piety before others in order to be seen by them, for then you have no reward from your Father in heaven. So whenever you give alms, do not sound a trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, so that they may be praised by others. Truly, I tell you, they have received their reward. But when you give alms, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your alms may be done in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. So Jesus was talking to an audience that had this conception of God as being that deity which is going to smite us if we displease him and will reward us if we please him. So he was putting into context, into that context, he was putting into the message of surrender. 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 And whenever you pray, do not be like the hypocrites, for they love to stand and pray in the synagogues and at the street corners, so that they may be seen by others. Truly, I tell you, they have received their reward. But whenever you pray, go into your room and shut the door and pray to your Father who is in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. When you are praying, do not heap up empty phrases as the Gentiles do, for they think that they will be heard because of their many words. Do not be like them. For your Father knows what you need before you ask. Why is that? Why is it that God knows what we need before we ask? Because God is connected to our personal consciousness. There is no deity out there, but there is deity to which we are connected intimately. What is that connection? That connection is through consciousness itself. And when we use our spiritual practice to discipline and condition our own consciousness, what we are doing is we are putting ourselves into, as Michael Singer would say it, into the hands of the universe. I'm reading a book right now, Biocentrism, which is actually a book about physics, and it's a book about consciousness. And it's probably going to be the next book of this series in the summer, about how we are able to connect consciousness to, how we are able to condition our consciousness to manifest those things that we are needing, or at least think we're needing. Well, as we look at this teaching, it comes to us from Jesus. At least it's written in what I call the executive summary of Matthew, which was compiled some 40 or 50 years after the crucifixion. And in this compilation of the teachings of Jesus, I consider these first few chapters of Matthew to be a summary. And that summary is put in the context of the teachings at the time. The teachings at the time still saw God as that which smites if you displease him. But in this passage, what we're seeing is we are seeing a recommendation to move into consciousness itself. Go into the closet. Speak in secret, and God who hears in secret will hear you. But God will know what you need before you ask. Consciousness itself, as Fillmore would say, that God is divine mind. I say that God is the activity of divine mind, which is consciousness itself. So our charge and the lessons that we can draw from Michael Singer's surrender experiment is to let go. To let go. To let go of our judgment. To let go of the judgment of that out there. To let go of the judgment that is in here. Let go of the thoughts that we hold. Let go of our behavior. Let go of our judgment of all of it so that we can be open to the activity of consciousness itself. We can start small. We can start with the little things. We can identify those things as we pay attention to our thoughts, as we pay attention to our feelings, as we pay attention to the internal chatter. And observe that internal chatter. Remember, I talked to you several weeks ago about being in touch with the observer, learning what the observer was seeing and engaging. As we pay attention to that internal chatter and let go of our judgments, we are then more open to the receiving of the energy of God, the energy of the universe, and respond. Respond in a way that is an expression of the divinity that is within you. You are the harbor of the Christ. You have the opportunity in each and every moment to be that expression of divinity, to be that expression of unconditional love, to be the legs, the hands, and the tongue of God. It's not about proselytizing. It's about responding with love to every situation that is before you. Surrender to that which is presented to you and respond in the way that you feel best exemplifies the Christ that is in you. You'll have what you need when you need it. Watch for that. Prove it to yourself. And build for yourself a life of fulfillment and wonder. We'll have our meditation. Resting in this moment. Allowing this moment to be unburdened, open, free. Observe what is happening in mind. See the thoughts that are coming and going. Allow yourself to divorce yourself from those thoughts. Allow yourself to identify with that which observes the thoughts. Notice how the thoughts attempt to hook your emotions. Just observe. Observe how the emotions begin to respond. And notice that you have a choice. You can unhook from those thoughts. Don't get invested in the thoughts. Recognize the thoughts as that which passes through rather than that which is permanent. It's part of you. So just notice, observe. as you detach yourself from the train of thoughts that moves through the mind, notice that there are times between those thoughts where you are dissociated, unhooked. Observe those spaces as well. Allow yourself to attend to those spaces. Step into them. Relish the emptiness in thought, the freedom in that moment. And know that you can practice this every day, several times a day. And for this opportunity to practice, we give thanks. And so it is that we come back to this time and space in gratitude. And so it is. As we allow ourselves to come back into this space, feel the gratitude that you have for your spiritual practice. Recognize that this is yours to build and to nurture as you see fit. And in that awareness, we give thanks. And as we come back to this time and space, let's come back sharing the words of the Lord's Prayer.